Welcome back to Inside the Box. I'm your host, Joanna Lee, and we are in the fifth and final episode of our International Women's Day series. Today's guest artist is a teacher, violinist, violist, and a Pilates and yoga instructor based in Los Angeles. She has taught and trained with celebrities and has given back to the online community by providing free seminars during the pandemic. I'm happy to present the lovely Cicely Nelson. Hi, Cicely.
Hi, Joanna. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's a pleasure and it's wonderful to have you here today. So let's start off with your origin story, starting with your musical career and your journey as a Pilates yoga instructor.
Well, I mostly started out in dance, actually. So I went to high school for ballet, and from there kind of segued both into music and into therapeutic movement as a career, because ballet is a pretty short career.
Oh, wow. Yes, that is true. So when did you start music?
I played a little bit as a kid, but in ballet school, it's like 24/7 ballet. So you're not really allowed to do anything else. Like even academics get very much a backseat. So I didn't take it seriously until college, until undergrad.
Oh, wow. And where did you do your undergrad?
I did my undergrad in New York City at Columbia University. In nothing relevant, in pre-med. Well, I guess it is relevant a little bit, but pre-med in American history.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. And then you pursued music after that?
Exactly.
Wow, that's amazing. And so tell me more about your academic journey. And during your academic career, what was the most significant thing you took away?
That's a great question. I think from my parents are both doctors, which is why I went into pre-med. And I think I took away that it was going to be a really long time before I could actually do any good for people, like being like pre-med, because it's just a lot of like chemistry and physics and stuff for like a decade before you can actually treat patients. So that felt very distant from like actually dealing with bodies, which is kind of what I had been doing my whole ballet career, is kind of figuring out physical problems and how to answer them. And alongside that, like starting music kind of so late, really feeling like I was so behind in music. Just this idea of like being more like problem and solution oriented with the body was, I think, a perspective that I got from like the movement practices. Helped with violin a lot. And like history stuff remains really important to me. I'm like very involved politically, so that kind of came from that time as well.
Wow, that's amazing. And you play the viola as well. So tell me more about what made you diversify your position as a string player.
That's such a good question. When you're a violinist, like you're really never good enough. So it was partially that I was like, oh, I want to try something else. And it was partially, honestly, like a visa issue. Like after my master's in violin, I was going to have to leave Canada. And my teacher at the time suggested to me, like, you probably would get a lot of work as a violist, actually. So why don't you try this instrument and you can do another master's degree and stay in Canada. So I started playing the viola, and people treat you completely differently as a violist. Like, they're like, that's so wonderful. You're such a lovely musician. What a beautiful sound. Like things I'd never heard in my life as a violinist. So it's just a completely different universe. I still do both, like with pretty equal opportunity, because they inform each other a lot, I think. But just especially coming to the violin later and having a lot of baggage, feeling like I never could do anything right, like just changed my world musically to be called complementary things as a musician.
Wow, that's wonderful. And I wish we had the opportunity to collaborate together, but unfortunately, I think we only sort of had a couple years where we were able to, have that opportunity. And even
I'm sure you were like much more of a hotshot.
Oh, no, not at all. But maybe next time when you're in town, or if I'm in town, we can collaborate.
That would be lovely. Let's do that.
Yeah. So my next question is, going back to medicine, how do you feel when it comes to the idea of music healing?
Hmm. It's wonderful because I think there isn't like a category of society that wouldn't agree with that. I think it's healing for every possible demographic. I think especially in classical music, we sometimes think of ourselves as kind of removed from popular culture or removed from like young people, like because it becomes this thing that like older people like, or that like it's a little classist at times or a lot classist. But the fact that music is something therapeutic, I think everybody agrees with it, right? Like it just
Absolutely.
gets to something really primal.
Absolutely. And is there a particular composer that you relate to or you feel that is the most therapeutic or something that you would use in your yoga and Pilates instruction?
I don't do a lot of, it's funny because most of my colleagues in bodywork do incorporate music into their practices. And that's a little bit harder for me because I'm always like listening to the music. But I've been putting like things uh like Marconi Union, like things that make a really good kind of backwash. Like my personal like favorite healing composer of all time is of course Bach. But and I maybe could have Bach on when I'm teaching, but I don't know. Like I'm not sure. It's just such a one track mind.
Absolutely. It takes a lot of concentration, I bet, just to, instruct a class and go through it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back to your role as a yoga Pilates instructor, um, what fundamental elements should we be aware of in our bodies, especially as a musician?
That is a huge question. um, I mean, it sounds a little facetious to say, but I think we become very disembodied. Like not even just musicians, but anyone who is working at a desk or doing something with their hands or doing anything demanding, we become very cerebral and we kind of forget that we have like our brains are in our bodies. Our brains go to the tips of our fingers, to the base of our toes. Like that's where our sense awareness is. So just this sense of like being embodied, being like feeling your blood and your sensations and your nerves flow, not just here and here even, but all the way through your body. Just for a start. And I think like the meditative aspect of both Pilates and yoga and any other somatic modality can work as well, like Tai Chi. What are other like Alexander technique I know is really popular with anything like this that's just that changes your mindfulness with relation to your body can be
Mhm.
because if you're not self-aware, you're walking around like this all the time. You're like, why do my shoulders hurt? Like, oh, I have shoulders. Here they are. So anything that changes your like psychosocial relationship to your body. And then of course there are all the nuts and bolts of like alignment and I prefer to call it alignment, but like posture, I think is what some people call it. Posture, I feel like kind of sounds too old fashioned and like, oh, we should stand this way. Alignment is just this idea that you can sit or stand in a variety of positions. Again, if you're self-aware, they can all be great. You can even kind of lean backwards for a bit while you're playing if you change it up, if you're mobile. But yeah.
Absolutely. You're right about that. And do you believe that a lot of musicians suffer from, I guess the common injury would be repetitive strain, right?
For sure. And
Yeah.
again, I think that goes back to this idea of just being disembodied, not being connected to like when we feel fatigue. Like when do we actually have a conversation with our body? Like, how are you feeling, body? Are you tired? like we go for a long time sometimes without having a drink of water, without going to the bathroom, like without breathing. Like check yourself sometimes. Like just make sure, like, am I perpetually inhaling and exhaling? I catch myself all the time holding my breath. Like that is the most fundamental tenet of like existence, maybe like just getting oxygen to your brain.
Absolutely.
So yeah, repetitive stress is physical, but it's also again like emotional, and it's the whole system.
Yes, absolutely. So My next question for you is, how are these injuries preventable through the practice of yoga or Pilates? And do you mind demonstrating a few exercises?
Sure, absolutely. They're 100% preventable because your body is designed to be in balance, right? So when we're only working these muscles, I mean, you see it all the time in musicians, like fantastic forearms and like no deltoids or like or no hamstrings or glutes. So this
Yeah.
just this idea of a really balanced body. Like if I have 5 minutes to warm up, which is often like I really have, I'll just want to give my body like a variety of positions and movements. And again, to alternate between like a challenge position and a release position, because they're all
Mhm.
important. So I could show you a couple now if you wanted.
Absolutely, that would be wonderful.
Great. Great. So I always recommend using the ground because like, if we're lying on the ground, your spine is straight. And like, we rarely have that kind of sense of alignment. Also, gravity is really useful here. So the most important joint in your body is your pelvis, are the bones of your pelvis, because this is where the biggest discs of your spine are. This is where your abdominals begin. So not only is like your core here, does it begin here, but like your brainstem is nourished by how stable your pelvis is. So if you have a shoulder injury and you don't attend to your pelvis, you can fix the shoulder, but this is likely the underlying culprit. So I'll often start, and I'm showing with my legs straight, just because when you let your legs hang straight, your pelvis is what we call neutral, which means your pubic bones and your hip points are parallel. A lot of the time when we lie on the ground, we do this. We do that flattening, but you can see then that my pelvis is actually really distorted. It's tucked under like a dog tucking its tail between its legs. We do that when we're in pain or like when we're protecting, and it's not a healthy place for your back to stay. So really dropping yourself to this place where your pelvis is neutral means you probably have a concavity behind your waist. And that's often the way I'll start my day, is just by like rocking back and forth on my tailbone, just to find the neutral pelvis. And then I'll sometimes turn that into a little bit of abdominal work, just like bringing one leg up and down. And this is like to help you find the hip joint. So again, if you're walking around with your pelvis like that, flattened out, you don't have a sense of your hip joint at all, right? So finding your neutral, finding your hip joints. I'm doing something really bad here, I'm noticing, and this is a violinist thing actually. So when we overwork here, our thoracic spine, which is what I'll talk about next, but that's basically where your rib cage is. It's from your low ribs up to here. It gets really tight. So when you lie on the floor, you're probably like that, like me, like really arched. So there is actually a solution for that. Oh, Grant, this is a little too high for me, honestly, but if you have a book at home or something like that, you can put that behind your head. And by lifting your head, it actually helps the ribs to drop. So again, it's a little too much, but you can feel this sense of like the rib cage coming down. So I'll do a little bit of abs. And if I did drop down onto the mat and notice that my thoracic spine was super tight, I would maybe do just like a little bit of mobilizing through there, just to get the ribs to move. So it's like, you can see it's like so basic and very diagnostic. So it would kind of depend what I'm feeling on a given day or what a body would need on a given day. And again, with anyone like working an instrument, probably there's going to be thoracic issues. So just to jump ahead to something that probably all string players can benefit from is a mermaid stretch. So, and I wouldn't necessarily warm up with this, but again, jumping into my body mid-afternoon, like, oh, we're tight in the thoracic. So you sit in this 90-90 position, and just this position is actually a really great thing for your pelvis, because the hips, because they're doing an opposite motion, they're kind of balancing each other out, and I'm just side bending. So this is a thoracic mobilization because I'm arcing my spine. I'm just hanging out there a little bit. If you really are like very type A about this, you can grab some arm weights and do your triceps here, but it's not necessary. It's really just about like mobilizing the spine. Just to be even, I'll do the other side. And with this position, ooh, that's my tight side. The hips are never the same. One hip is always tighter than the other. On the tighter side, like if I'm really to sit my right hip down, my left hip will not stay down. So that's actually what I need on this side. Yeah, maybe that's because it's the violin side, honestly, because this side is like so much tighter. And finally, like a really great warm up also is so this is the first time you're bringing your spine like free from the ground, right, in all fours. And again, just mobilizing the spine in like a cat and cow motion, and even like wag the tail motion. And for a dog is always good, alternate arms and legs. Sorry, I have a wall there. But anything where you're like gently challenging your core and giving stability to your thoracic spine is just a really good warm up. Most of the work I do with clients is going to be more like you can see very targeted to like what the specific needs of the day are. But for musicians, we need to find the core, find the mid back, both like stretch and strengthen the shoulders. So plank family stuff is great. You don't need crazy heavy weights, but we should be doing a little bit of weight. So like I have like 5, 3, and 2 pounds, and I just do like arm circles, just to like really almost think of like lubrication more than like weightlifting. I could go on and on. It depends how much more you want to see.
Thank you so much, Cicely. I really appreciate that.
Do you have any specific issues you would want addressed?
Well, I would say there are days where I feel super, super tight in my right side and of the hips and also my lower back. I also have a lot of neck issues and shoulder issues, especially the left shoulder. It seems to be a common string player injury or strain, repetitive strain. Yes.
Yeah.
And I believe it's probably due to changing to the shoulder rest and finding the best shoulder rest is just nearly impossible, it seems.
I'm a big advocate of the lifted chin rest. I don't know if you've tried that.
No, I have not.
They're great. I actually don't use a shoulder rest anymore because my chin rest has been getting higher and higher.
Yeah.
And it feels amazing because the violin could actually sit on my collarbone and I can move it around. There's a company called Frisch and Denning. I don't know if you've heard of them. They have they train fitters, and they have a fitter. I don't know if they have one in Vancouver, but they definitely have one in Seattle.
Okay.
And they'll watch you play, and they'll make you try like 30 different chin rests, and then they decide like how high it should be. It's really life-changing.
Amazing. I will share the link below just to, have that available for the public.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you for letting me know. That's awesome.
Sure. Of course, it's like been a life changer for me because I've tried every shoulder rest, like like the crazy one with the hook. I just played for a while, like that one I loved because it didn't move, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And, I really feel you. But this has been like I have never been so comfortable as I am with the super lift. I don't have an instrument down here; they're upstairs, or else I would show you.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate the tip, and perhaps we can do another session where I, talk about this again if you're available. I know how busy you get.
For your hip stuff and lower back, especially if you've been in a car accident, there's a good chance you have some piriformis like holding in your hip. So you probably do this stretch already, but I would do like the number 4 stretch. Do you do that one a lot?
Oh yes, 100%.
That's a really good one. And when you're in number 4, you also want to make sure you're neutral, so you're not doing it like that. So you're here. So when your legs come up, you're like very active instead of just what? Yeah. Absolutely. That's a really good one for hips, lower back stuff.
Thank you, Cicely. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And can you tell me more about this new studio you've just opened?
This is Atwater Pilates. Thank you for asking. It's, as you can see, we don't have equipment yet. Yeah, it's just been a really lifelong dream to have my own space, to do the work the way I want to do it, which doesn't always line up with like big box studios who just want to do like fitness and get skinny quick. And actually, I shouldn't say that. I haven't worked for studios like that in Los Angeles. I've been fortunate to find like the places where I fit. But I believe, as you probably understand now, in a lot of like just appealing to the whole person instead of just making it about fitness.
Absolutely. And I believe that is important when you enter studio. I mean, I did try Legree West at one point, and wow, I can most definitely say it was a really challenging workout, but I don't know if it's for me.
It's not Pilates. I'm just
It's okay. You're in the States, so.
not to be. No, it's American. It's here too.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
I mean, again, I'm never gonna like poo-poo what works. If it works for someone, awesome. It's great. Like if it works for someone and it makes their body feel better and everything, wonderful. I will say it doesn't work for a lot of people.
It certainly does not work for me.
Yeah, no, it's like if someone really wants a short, hard workout, I'm just not sure why you would though, because like a lot of research says we should, like it's better for like our nervous system, for all of like to have like a warm up and a cool down, like,
Um,
and our bodies we don't want to move for a short duration. Like the longer we move, the better.
yeah.
So I never understand those trends, like workout in 15 minutes. It's like, that, yeah.
No, thanks.
Like if someone said that to you, like you only need to practice the violin 15 minutes a day, you'd be like, buddy, you have no idea.
Absolutely do not do that, by the way. Oh, well, can you tell me more about your path towards moving to LA? And before that, I remember you were in a training session, and you were also instructing classes in the Caribbean.
Oh yeah. So not long after I certified, I was working for a teacher in New York called Erica Bloom, and she has her own studio and chain of studios. And then I moved and I went to grad school in Vancouver then. And there are a couple of really wonderful studios in Vancouver, and I will promote them here because I love them like from the bottom of my heart. I don't know why I'm saying them. There's one that I worked for that she is a wonderful studio. And that's the Movement Studio on 4th in Kitsilano. They have group classes, privates. Karen Wegler runs a really tight ship with incredible teachers. And I didn't know what to expect at all. I was like, oh, I haven't really taught since I lived in New York. Let me wander on in here. And it was just one of the best places I've ever taught. So I taught there when I lived in Vancouver. Just kind of figuring out where to end up. We always have that dilemma after grad school of like, stick around or move on.
Yeah.
And I ended up deciding to move back to the States, and I reconnected with Erica Bloom, who wanted me to open, she wanted to like move her brand to the West Coast, and she wanted me to open in Los Angeles. But she wasn't ready to open for 6 months. So that was when I went to Turks and Caicos to work in her studio there. And then I moved to Los Angeles in 2017 to open Erica Bloom LA.
That's amazing. And now you have your own studio. That's fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been a very long road, but it's time.
Absolutely. And speaking of career, especially a career path that's similar to yours, what would you tell young women who want to be like you or pursue the similar type of career?
In the Pilates or in the?
Let's say both.
No, what I love about the music world now, when I first was kind of doing both like 10 years ago, people were like, oh, we don't do that. Like you can't, like I remember someone telling me once, like, don't say you do two things. Say you're like just a musician or just a Pilates teacher. And I love that the world is changing that way, because we're all realizing like, basically no one can get by unless you're in the LA Phil. No one can get by anymore, like purely as a gigger, like we all need the side hustle. And I think the same is even true of Pilates a little bit. I mean, you could only do Pilates, but I think there would definitely be a kind of burnout as well, because treating bodies is like very physically draining. So it's lovely to, I would just encourage people to like not feel limited to the one thing you feel like you're good at. If you're curious about other things, try them all, and maybe you'll keep doing them all, and maybe they'll intersect, which they definitely have for me. I've taught a lot of musicians, and musicians need me
Yeah.
more than anyone else. And I'm fortunate in the sense that I understand what we are going through. In New York, I taught Joshua Bell briefly, and I just was teaching him Pilates. Like, we just did Pilates together. And I remember one day he was like, "Can you just come over tomorrow and watch me practice and give me some tips?" And my brain was like,
Amazing.
can you imagine like telling Joshua Bell, it's the fourth finger, like you're like
Yes. I'm teaching you about movements. Wow, that's amazing. And are there any other people that you worked with, like musicians that are in the profession?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people just who have been working in music their whole career. I don't know, no one is with as big of a name as that.
That's
Um,
so amazing though, Joshua Bell. I mean,
I remember in New York, that, like, working with a lot of like prodigies who had like incredible pain issues, like
mhm,
kids who were like 17, 18, like being pressured to be in huge competitions, practicing like so many hours, like to the extent that they were like, "Oh, I can't come to, like, I don't go to school because I have to practice. I can't go to Pilates because I have to practice," but with huge pain issues already. Like, I remember, do you remember when like Julia Fisher kind of like exploded on the scene, and they all wanted to play like in a back bend?
yeah.
She played with such a hyperextended back. I was like, no, it's like that's why your back is hurting, maybe. But no, sorry, that was just fun. But it's, even if you're 17, like you still need to be taking care of your body. Like, it's, especially if you're an athlete, which a musician is definitely an athlete.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is well said, because a lot of people think that we're just, people that make music, but essentially we are the most physically active group of people.
So
So,
true, and so vulnerable too, because like like dancers, you can discharge that energy. Like, if you're nervous or in pain, once you get moving on stage, you're moving such big global muscles that it all goes. It's
yeah.
the opposite with a musician, because we're moving like tiny in our fingers. Actually, like, there aren't muscles in our fingers, like it's in our palm and our forearms. So if I'm sure you've had like a finger strain before, and it like feels it's gonna last forever. Like, if you strain your,
Actually, that's the one thing I've been lucky about. Never, ever have I experienced finger strain.
I've done my fourth finger a few times, probably just from overwork, but it like goes numb for a long time, and you're like, oh my God, like there's nothing I can do to like change this. So we're really especially vulnerable because we're using such small muscles, and often without the support of global muscles.
Yes, yes, you know, that does play a big part in the picture. And unfortunately, though, I have to say I have experienced carpal tunnel and tendonitis, even though I haven't, experienced the finger strain. And I think that's also a common repetitive strain injury that most string players experience when they're preparing for competitions or exams, or
I didn't understand
I have no idea where that came from.
that. Super, super, super common as well. And I think, and that's why musicians are often like, oh, I can't do yoga, I can't put weight on my hands because I've had carpal tunnel. And again, like, if you're in the middle of a flare up and you're a beginner, sure, we're not going to stay in plank forever, but like, you have to build up grip strength. Like, you have to build up, like, wrist joints. There are 12 bones in your wrists. And if one of them's off, oh wow, not today. So you can tell if one of them's off, because if you circle your wrists, you'll
Yeah.
hear like a click, click, click. And that's how you know some, uh-oh. Yeah. So, I mean, just mobilizing this joint and putting weight on it is critical. And people are like, oh, but I play my instrument. You're not putting weight on your hands. Like, you need to load your joints. You need to load them.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there any particular stretch that you would recommend to the audience that are specific string players and have those type of injuries?
I'm sure they're all doing this one already, but if there's one you should do, it's of course like extension.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Hopefully everyone does this already.
Yes. I would definitely recommend that.
I love also like the finger ones, like with a rubber band, like articulating your fingers, because that works all of this stuff as well. That works the forearms. And then doing the extension and flexion on all fours. You can put your palms on the ground and do that there. And like I said earlier, eagle arms is really good. This one is really good because it actually stretches your shoulder joint.
Yeah. Yeah. That I need. I'll definitely consider all the movements and put them into practice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course.
So I was wondering, as both a Pilates yoga instructor and a string player and a string instructor, would you say that there are a lot of similarities in the style and the manner of which you teach?
100%. That's such a good question. That's such a good question. I did Suzuki teacher training right before I moved away from New York. And it was just so mind-blowing to me how like all of the tenets of like how Suzuki is taught is like how you would teach yoga. It's like really progressive, really customized. I mean, even like subtle things like I forgot what it's called in Suzuki, like the talent education, just this idea that like talent isn't innate, that you can like ear training, like this is all part of like raising a musician. That's definitely what the more progressive schools of like Pilates and yoga are about. It's like really customized, progressive, gentle, building upon successes, like not just flinging yourself into a new pose, but beginning like on your back on the mat, tabletop, one leg at a time, tabletop, two legs, tabletop, extend the legs, like building upon success so that the student or the client feels like ownership and increased strength, like in a way that's not too fast or abrupt or out of their control.
Absolutely. And I do believe the principles are very good in Suzuki training. I guess there are some things I question, but I think it's just due to the fact that it can produce a few habits, but which pedagogical method doesn't, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think a lot of the objection to Suzuki is like the reading thing, and that's a fallacy. Like I don't know what schools didn't advocate for reading, but like the school where I trained and the schools where I taught in Vancouver and Los Angeles are all about like if they're reading letters of the alphabet, they should be reading notes in music. Where I think some of the disconnect is because just as children speak better than they read, it's the same thing. Like children can often play more advanced music than they can read. So usually their reading skills are like a book behind their playing skills.
That is true. I did grow up on Suzuki, but my teacher did make a point in introducing note reading as well. So, but it was a different method, and I'm not obviously a Suzuki teacher, so that's a discussion we can always have another time. But yeah, thank you for sharing. I have a few more questions. What are your thoughts on the classical music scene today, and what can we do to sustain the arts?
That's such a great question. I really think a huge shift is going on. And it's initiated by like our generation and the generation younger than us, because they are pushing for change, and they're like, it's not going to be like old white straight men anymore. Like we're not just going to play this and European music anymore. Like there is a change afoot that's really long overdue. And it's funny because I see the institutions like being like, yeah, we're on board, and they're like, oh shit, what are we going to play? Like and all of those really racist arguments, frankly, about like, oh, but you know, we just play the good music. It's like,
Yeah, I'm not in total agreement with that. And I do believe that there are a lot of women composers that are out there that made beautiful music. I mean, I think I
Oh,
discussed this in one of my episodes, and I had two guests actually advocate for International Women's Day. And, they're fantastic musicians in their own right, and they have a brilliant career, but they also advocate, you know, the togetherness and the cohesiveness of women and supporting women. And I do believe that's basically the main theme of my series right now.
that's great. And it's great that you're uplifting that message because that's the future, I think. And it's so great to talk to kids about this too, because they're very opinionated about what they like and like that's what they want to listen to. It's scary sometimes because like I've been doing that with the kids I teach. Like, what do you want to listen to today? And they'll say like, I don't even know their name, Lil Nas or something. I'm like, oh, right, But but I guess we have to just listen to what the people want. But we,
Unfortunately, yes. And there is a stigma on that, and the standard repertoire, it shouldn't be the norm, but it is, unfortunately. And people are focusing more on brilliance rather than content and the meaning behind it. And that's a huge, huge problem in the classical music society, unfortunately.
so true, so true. But by the same token, I think one of the things like personally for me that I notice is just with this really rapid consumption of everything from like social media to like the pace of life now is so fast. Like I wonder if that's affecting what we appreciate artistically, you know?
That does definitely play a role, I would say, especially since everything's accessible now. We don't need to buy recordings. We can just, get it from Apple Music or whatever streaming service there is out there. But from time to time, it is still rather relevant to purchase, I don't know, go buy a CD or go buy, you know, go to the Apple store and actually buy the recording if it is in digital format, because it's really important to support these artists so that we could definitely sustain the arts, right? And
Or go to a concert.
yeah, absolutely. Well, once it's possible.
Well, yeah. I mean, even that, like, I feel like live music is not as like we don't go out as much to like just hear music. I mean, it's been a really long time, so it's hard to remember what that was like. But
Yes, yes. And hopefully that will become more, of a common practice once this pandemic is over and we all get our vaccines. Yeah, and you've had such an amazing career. So, going back to that, what are your proudest accomplishments?
ooh, um, I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about that before. Um, I think I'm most proud of doing things people said I shouldn't do. Like I'm like taking music seriously for like the first time when I was an undergrad. People are like, "Oh, you don't do that. Like it's too late." And
Mhm.
just being like, "Why?" Um, and I'm glad I didn't listen to anyone then, because of course it's not too late. I'm really proud to finally start my own studio because it's as much as I have really appreciated working for some really wonderful mentors in everywhere in New York and Vancouver and Los Angeles, but like just like what you're doing now, also having this sense of self-trust, being like, I actually have a message that I should just step up and say, like, I feel happy to be in a position to do that now.
Absolutely. And that's really important that we, again, supporting each other is the main message here, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I believe positive reinforcement is something that, you know, that's really hard to do for ourselves. As
Hmm.
string players, you mentioned that it's often a stigma that we don't feel good enough to, you know, to today's standards. And perhaps it's time to look at today's standards and, you know, realistically, is it sustainable? And I believe the answer is no.
Yeah, that's such a good point. That's such a good point because none of us want to stay in that world. right?
No, absolutely not. There's more fluidity in the world now, and there's more diversity. And, one of the things that we should definitely get over is the patriarchal society of classical music. And that's one of the things that women should advocate for more.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, I was wondering, how do you balance life as a Pilates instructor, musician, and a violin teacher?
Balance. That's not my strong suit. um, it's really easy to get burnt out. I think that's one of my 2021 goals is to figure out how to like say no to things more, like how to dial
Mhm.
back. Because I tend to overcommit just because there's so much that I want to do. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not good at that yet. It's a work in progress. And I think what's been the biggest wake up call for me there has just been realizing that if I'm pouring all my effort into teaching and then in Los Angeles still commuting, like that takes up such a big chunk of your day. And why I do all of this ultimately, like the artistic stuff, is to be creative myself. And I have no energy left to be creative, which it's just kind of sad to see that. I remember like, I don't know why that reminds me of like Leonard Bernstein. Someone asked saying like, aren't you proud of your career as like the conductor of the New York Phil for like, I don't know how many decades he was, but he was for a long time. And he's like, yeah, it's great, but I actually just wanted to be a composer. Like, like it's when you burn the candle at all the ends, it's easy to sometimes forget one of the things that drive you. So
Yes.
that's the goal of the year.
Thank you for that candid answer. I really appreciate it. And perhaps you just need a day off to just practice self care and, have that moment of creativity. And hopefully you'll be able to do that and set time aside for yourself despite all your successes, because I do believe your ambitions are beautiful and what makes you you. And yeah, I would definitely say you need a break.
It's spring break now, and I'm going up to my in-laws like now. So well,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
That's wonderful. So, speaking of projects, can you tell me about your recent and upcoming projects, um, aside from your new success as a Pilates new studio?
Projects. Oh, there's always like a bunch on the burner. Um, so I work with a couple of children's orchestras. So getting them like to do their, because it's all still Zoom. So getting them to do their recordings and feel good about that is a big project. There are like a lot of children to coordinate, teaching them to count, like things
Yeah.
like that. So that's a big project. Um, yeah, the studio, of course, getting the studio started is kind of the main one recently. I practicing, I'm working with a coach for the first time. I realized we did a master class last month, and I realized it was the first time I've played in a master class since grad school. I was like, oh my God,
Wow.
crazy. So that's fun to like get some inspiration again. Um, I'm a flamenco dancer also. So
Oh,
keep
yes, I remember. That keeps you busy.
doing that on the side a little bit, but yeah. And my partner and I are trying to do a family band.
Oh, amazing. That's so awesome. Hopefully, you'll be able to share that on YouTube or yeah, I would love to see that actually. I love dance. I did a bit of dancing on the side too, and ballet's like one of my favorite, but I find that it's not realistic for me to aspire to be a professional ballet dancer, obviously, but um it is every little girl's dream at one point.
I have so many clients who just want to do the ballet bar. Like it's such a beautiful way to like begin and end your day. And it's
Absolutely.
all rounded like movement wise. A great addition to like playing an instrument because it's all like kind of more lower body and torso and
And it's relatable, right?
yeah, do it.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna definitely go back to it. Right now I'm doing Zumba, but that's
Oh, good.
Not like ballet, I guess.
It's coordination, it will help. And flamenco in Vancouver is maybe better than LA.
Oh, really?
There's a school called Mosaico,
Mhm.
and the teacher there, Cassandra, is wonderful. And all the people in the classes, hi everybody, are salt of the earth, like really amazing people who like are really supportive, and they all perform every week. Like if you're in her classes, you go hang out at it's on Cambie. That there's like that flamenco bar. What's it called? Like it's like Cambie and like 18th or King Edward, one of those, like East Van.
Yeah.
The name will come to Kino. Kino.
Okay.
Yeah, there's live flamenco there every night.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what there is now, but I think I don't know if how open things are there, but
Yeah. Well, maybe one day you'll just have to get on the plane and visit me, and we'll just have to go together.
we will for sure. It's been too long.
Absolutely. It's been years. So I was wondering, how would you celebrate International Women's Day?
um, it's funny. I'm not really like a holiday person. I'm not really like an occasion person. Um, Only in the sense that like every day is the holiday.
Yeah.
Like I like it's like birthdays. Like we're happy that we're alive every day of the year, but like on our birthday, we like give it a little extra kick, and we maybe have some like affirmations that we want to like carry into the year, you know?
Yeah.
So with regard to International Women's Day, I think just I'm inclusivity is like the most important thing. Like who is left out of everything, and that's the person we need to bring in. It's just I work on that with my teaching, and like it's it always I'm humbled by how like like blind spots that I've had in the past. Like why didn't I see that? You know, um, and of course, like you said, always like if we progress, reaching a hand back to pull someone up, because that's how we progress also, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is such a lovely sentiment, and I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for joining us today, Cicely. You are absolutely amazing. And for those of you watching, thanks for tuning in. There will be a performance of Cicely, so please stay and enjoy. Also, leave comments if you have any, and don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, please be well, practice self-care and social distancing. Take care. Bye.